Salutations everybody, it is Matty here, and go figure we're talking about Obsidian once again. Now, this video's topic is less about a trending news bit and more so just a conversation between you and I. I hope that we can keep this courteous, kind, because we're going to be talking about Bethesda and Obsidian. It's very hard to have a conversation about Obsidian Entertainment and the games that they've gone on to make. We're talking about a company that's made some serious strides when they made Alpha Protocol, which some will call a hidden gem, but it is a less than stellar quality, and they went on to make the likes of South Park Stick of Truth, The Outer Worlds, and now they're thriving as a AAA RPG developer who's working on Avowed underneath Microsoft as an exclusive studio. So they've really made some significant changes. But whenever you talk about Obsidian and their games, due to their design philosophies and how they make the games and evoke a sense of memory from older Bethesda, it's hard to have a conversation about them without Bethesda stepping in. And what I wanted to talk about in this video is how we need to let Obsidian, I personally feel, do their own thing. Now, this may be something you disagree with, and you may find the comparisons helpful for the sake of conversation, for the sake of putting Obsidian maybe in a better light and spotlighting what consumers like, and I would understand that. But I think I'm going to make a sound point as to why we should just let them be their own entity, essentially, without the comparisons of Bethesda. Now, before I do go further, I need to make one thing clear, because I know people will instantly twist what I'm trying to say into something else. I have absolutely no interest in defending Bethesda. They've earned every single bit of criticism for these last number of years that they have gotten. None of it to me is unjust, unfair, overreactions, overreaching. I think it's completely fair the way that they get treated, because they kind of kick dirt in the consumer's face. I'm talking about, of course, the launch of Fallout 76, but also the continued support where it's just a roller coaster ride with that game. Even at its best, when it came to Fallout 76 Wastelanders, an expansion I enjoyed, I quickly left the game behind because updates afterwards weren't going all that smooth. Of course, the likes of their initial stance on review copies, trying to ostracize reviews for consumers. That's an anti-consumer move right there, clear as day. And fortunately, they did back off on that. But the fact that they even went out and did something like that says a lot to me. And also the exclusivity with the PlayStation 5, taking third-party games like Ghostwire Tokyo as well as Deathloop and making them exclusive to the PlayStation 5. I thought this was a foolish move, especially when you're seeing multi-platform titles from Bethesda continue to flop in the terms of sales. You start up a new IP and your first move is to make it exclusive. To me, that says we're trying to just collect our check, make our money, and move on, not build a brand, not build something exciting for a consumer base. And personally, as someone who used to be a really big fan of Bethesda, I found that a significantly disappointing move that I don't feel a lot of people are talking about all that much, but maybe that's just me. Point being is that I'm not defending them, and I feel the criticism they've earned is entirely fair. But when it comes to Obsidian, our young boy has grown. Obsidian has grown. They are adults now. And so with that in mind, I'd like to go ahead and talk about them and how Bethesda always seems to squeak into the conversation somehow. I think a lot of this is because, as I said earlier, Obsidian's design philosophies really match with a time where Bethesda was making those style of games. It brings us back to what I would consider a golden era of Bethesda Game Studios titles, with the likes of Oblivion, Fallout 3, Skyrim. These types of games were so powerful and moving for me as a gamer, I couldn't imagine a world without them. And so, of course, you're going to see things like Fallout 3 versus Fallout New Vegas, both releasing around the same time, two different companies, and I think these are understandable comparisons that are going to be made. But afterwards, it continued with the likes of Fallout 4/Fallout 76 versus The Outer Worlds, and Fallout 76 versus Grounded, where it starts to feel like, at least for me, that Obsidian can't do anything without the comparison to Bethesda. And it's almost like, in a way, while I think Bethesda is an Obsidian Shadow, it starts to feel like Obsidian's actually really sitting in Bethesda's shadow, because anything they do is connected directly to Bethesda. Like, even with Avowed, immediately, I'll be honest, I got Skyrim vibes, but the Skyrim vibes I got were more so the inspiration, the adventurous feeling, the ambition of it all. To me, that's what Skyrim's most defining quality was. For a 2011 game, that is one of the most ambitious titles I have ever seen in my entire life. And so when people say that this is a Skyrim-like game, it's not the idea of it being another Skyrim that would excite me, it's the idea that it is as ambitious as what Skyrim was. But what happens is you'll start to see leaks come out saying, like, this is a Skyrim-like game, and that instantly, I'd say, put Obsidian in Bethesda's shadow, and I feel they've grown beyond them as a consumer-friendly company and well aware of their audience and what they want, which we'll continue to highlight now. In order for Obsidian to grow, be their own thing, I just start to feel like the comparisons to Bethesda need to slow down because quite frankly, they're outdoing Bethesda each step of the way and are in their own league. They're officially working on a AAA RPG with the goal of setting the standards for RPGs, just like games such as The Witcher had done in the past. And I feel like having them in the same conversation as the company who dropped Fallout 76 as their latest entry in an acclaimed RPG franchise makes them even more incomparable. However, I do think it's logical to compare the likes of The Outer Worlds to Fallout New Vegas, a prior Obsidian RPG, and as well as Fallout 3 because they fall in the same category, but these are games that are a decade old, once again highlighting just how long it had been since we saw an RPG designed like The Outer Worlds, which is what I mentioned in my review. Maybe The Outer Worlds isn't innovative, but it's something we hadn't seen in a while. However, it feels like every conversation about The Outer Worlds turns into how it is better than Fallout 76, which as much as I don't like 76, this is a game that is vastly different from what The Outer Worlds is. That's not to say that none of us can dunk on 76. I think it's totally reasonable and, once again, well-deserved, well-earned to completely slam dunk Fallout 76. With that in mind though, when you start to drag other games in the conversation, I feel like in a sense it dilutes what the game that we're talking about is doing right and wrong. Does some of The Outer Worlds look a lot better, let's say the conversation system, because Fallout 4's was so underwhelming? Of course it does, but could you pick apart, for example, the actual choices within The Outer Worlds, focusing on the game itself and saying, hey, I feel like the front-loaded choices in this game that are way too open for the player whittle down what is supposed to be a very strong RPG, and it's not really until later in the game in an already shorter RPG that you start to see some more significant choices and the payoff of investing in certain skills with your characters. And that's not me telling people how to talk about a game, it's really just my perspective that I'm sharing with you, and you're free, of course, to disagree. But I just feel like if we're gonna talk about Obsidian and what they want to do better, what they need to do better, we should talk about their games and sort of look at the flaws within those titles, because The Outer Worlds is definitely flawed. It's not a perfect game, but I feel like what happens, it's usually either defended by taking a look at Bethesda or put on a higher pedestal by taking a look at what Bethesda's done in the past, when I feel like that almost prevents Obsidian from making that next step forward that they do need to make. Speaking of the pedestal, that's one dangerous thing I talk about with any company, right? This isn't anything original I've said, but I feel like it's very pertinent to this conversation, is I love Obsidian. I've never made that a secret. I like talking about them. I don't know another company right now that I'd be sitting down having this kind of conversation about, like me sitting down and doing this for Activision or something. Like it just, you know, Obsidian's that type of company. They fit my channel well. I really like their games. So don't get me wrong, but what sort of happens is as they make, say, Avowed, The Outer Worlds, they're making these very smart choices, and they seem to just be on this roll here, and they've grown so much that they get put on this pedestal, right? And they continue to grow, they continue to grow, they continue to grow, they continue to go higher, and, you know, a little bit cliche, but the higher they go, the harder you fall. These are businesses, and they are designed strictly to make money. We will compare here. You just got to take one look at Bethesda. Think of them during 2013 to 2016. What a golden era for them, man. Like, think of the new IPs they started. They started to thrive as a publisher with the likes of Wolfenstein and New Order. And then you get Fallout 4. It felt like every step of the way they were listening to us. I can't fathom during that stretch of time Bethesda would become the company they are today. And the reason I bring them into the conversation is not to be a hypocrite, but more so just to say that you could say the same thing for CD Projekt Red, a company that continues to have its pedestal built higher and higher. And these are companies, they're not your friends. And I always say this to people, there are great people working inside the companies that you can establish connections to, be fans of, maybe be friends of, but the company as a whole is not your friend, and they want your money because that's what keeps them afloat. And even with Obsidian, I imagine one day or another you're going to see them make a silly decision. I think that, say, the Epic Game Store decision with The Outer Worlds was really silly and put a pin in the balloon of The Outer Worlds a little too early. The one thing that saved them is as it got closer to launch, myself, a lot of other content creators, awareness started to spread about Game Pass and saying, hey, if you want to play The Outer Worlds on PC, you can for even cheaper than if you were to get it on the Epic Game Store, and you don't have to associate with that storefront at all. Point being though is that that was in the middle of a Microsoft acquisition where they clearly already had a lot of money, and then to put them on the Epic Game Store after that, when I feel like once again they had enough cash, that was silly. So they're not immune to these anti-consumer decisions. They're not immune to bugs, of course. They're very well connected with their audience, and I feel they've properly identified how to do it, which we'll talk about in just a second. But I just want to make sure people are aware, and maybe I'm just putting these thoughts out there for no reason, but I guess better safe than sorry. But like I said, there's one other set of games I wanted to talk about, and that's Grounded. I think Grounded versus Fallout 76 is probably the most fair comparison that's happening, but it sort of taps into what I was saying about Obsidian doing it right. Fallout 76 and Grounded are structured in a similar manner. You can sort of get a feel that both games are the same in the sense of survival elements, collecting food, drinks, resources in the world, albeit Fallout 76 is a lot bigger of a world and they've got quests and different things you can do throughout, and of course Grounded is a lot smaller and it's just really getting started. But the difference here is that Obsidian was able to identify and understand their audience and take a look at, hey, we understand these people like RPGs from us, but we want to do this game. Now, here's, like I said, where I think a fair comparison would make a lot of sense. You've got Bethesda, who said, we're going to go ahead, get multiple development teams under the Bethesda umbrella, and we're going to make this huge build-a-thon game, essentially, that is going to become a live service title for us. Meanwhile, Grounded, Obsidian seemingly understood this is not what people want from us. They probably did learn from what happened with Fallout 76 and said, we're going to take a small team and see if we can get something going here. 13 people. And if it's a little surprise success for us, it's a little surprise success for us. That's how you, when you make a lot of money, right? I feel like that's how you do it, right? Like they came into a lot of money. Do a little passion project. Don't go crazy and turn your next big game into a live service. Go make a passion project that people can really build around, pardon the pun, and create a player base for. Like the fact that Grounded's even relevant on Twitch is surprising to me. I really didn't think it would go that far. But point being is, I do think sometimes the Bethesda comparison's relevant, but I personally feel like Obsidian's exceeded Bethesda in so many areas nowadays for many years that the comparisons can slow down, and maybe we don't need them as much to talk about Obsidian and spotlight what they're doing right. It doesn't require Bethesda in the conversation. And maybe I'm just focusing on my own comment section at times too much, because that's where I do see a lot of this, but I care about my community. I interact with you guys a lot. And so I feel like this is just my 2 cents on the topic. Maybe you disagree entirely. Maybe this is a waste of a time when it comes to videos. But I just thought, you know, I put it out there as a bit of a conversation, something a little more chill for the channel, but still topical, still fits, still makes sense. Once again, I need to stress, I'm not defending Bethesda, and I'm not saying you can't criticize them, you can't go say something bad about them, how dare you, and if you do compare Obsidian and Bethesda, then you're entirely wrong. No, I'm not saying that at all. It's more so just my thoughts on just how Obsidian's really continued to succeed, and that we should, I guess, treat them as such, put them on a higher standard, and approach them with larger expectations, but without raising that pedestal where we'll be shocked if a company acts like a company and does something maybe anti-consumer. Anyway, it's a mouthful. Hopefully I did a good job explaining this all, because I have notes and I was like following them along the way, but at the same time I'm like, do I want to make this? Well, here we go. Let's do it. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I pass it off to you. Let me know what you're thinking in the comments down below. It'll be an interesting conversation. I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you, so fire away. Other than that, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. Big thank you to all the patrons who continue to kill it with that support here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.